According to its critics, and there are plenty of them, it will cost at least £32 billion, £1,200 per family, just so businessmen can get to Birmingham a few minutes faster. But as the government announced this week that they are going ahead with the HS2, the country's second high-speed rail line running from London to Birmingham, they were also pushing the benefits to the economy of the whole country. This computer animation makes the whole project look very whizzy. The problem for the government is that it whizzes through Tory heartlands, uniting MPs and Conservative councils in opposition. There were concessions this week, longer tunnels to appease critics, but at a cost of millions more on the bill. Making the announcement, the minister was clear, though, about the cost of not going ahead.
The price for that would have been paid in lost business, lower growth, fewer jobs and more miseries for passengers on a network that could not cope with the capacity.
Joining us now is Martin Tett, the leader of Buckinghamshire County Council. Martin, the government's point is there's no alternative. What would you spend £32 billion on?
Well, I certainly wouldn't be spending it on high speed too. I mean, the key thing there is that Tuesday was described by many independent observers as the triumph of spin over common sense. If you're going to spend £32 billion at a time of sky-high national debt, I mean, you really have to make sure you're spending that money well. There's three key criteria, really. I mean, you have to make sure, first of all, it's good value for money, because that's your money, my money, and the money of every single person watching this programme. You have to make sure there are no viable alternatives, and you've assessed those properly. And lastly, you really have to persuade people that it's genuinely in the national interest. And the interesting thing is, virtually every independent analyst who's looked at this has found the government wanting on all three of those. And just to give you one key example, and there are many, many of them, you know, the whole business case of this trip to Birmingham and the value for money of that rests on the fact that every single minute spent on a train by a businessman is absolutely wasted. But we all know that in an age of iPods and iPads and mobile phones, some of the most productive time any businessman ever spends is on a train. So the idea that it generates billions of pounds to the economy is just absolute nonsense.
Well, OK, if they admitted that point, that you can work on a train, you're going to patch this up in the end with your Conservative-led government, aren't you? You're all Conservatives together. It'll be done behind closed doors. Well,
this is a coalition government decision. Ironically, of course, this is actually, as Maria Eagle reminded the House on Tuesday, this is Gordon Brown's project. This is Gordon Brown's big dream. It's his big silver bullet. He and Andrew Adonis dreamt this up, and the coalition cabinet have run with it. And I think the problem is that virtually every government gets deluded by the idea that some big prestige project is a silver bullet that solves problems. The reality is, what really solves structural problems in our economy is actually investing in the road and rail infrastructure around the whole country that people actually use today. The broken roads, the broken pavements, the rail trains that are overcrowded, that we really need to sort out. That's what's going to persuade people to invest and bring local jobs when we really need them.
OK, let's just go back to Connor and Annette about this. Big projects like this, could a coalition government have the will to push them through, do you think, Annette?
Well, I think so. I mean, my party obviously is in favour of the whole scheme. Details, of course, are really important, and particularly for the local area. I wouldn't like to deny that in any way. And it's an awful lot of money. It's a large sum of money, but we have to think how long since it is, since we've had a major investment in our railways. It goes back to the 19th century, I think, something really major, rather than just doing something on the edges, which all of that is important, but it's not solving our fundamental problem of undercapacity. And whilst we're talking about the roads, if we're actually going to be putting more freight on the rail, that will be an enormous advantage to many of us. Yeah. And long term, when this is expanded to further north and to the Scotland, then that, of course, is going to save on air travel and carbon emissions. So there is an awful lot, I think, that you can argue for, but I obviously understand. I lived in Aylesbury myself, so I know the area really well, and I understand the local objections.
So determined. Martin Tett, are you going to have to go to legal action, do you think, to stop this, or will it just all fizzle out anyway?
Well, we're obviously looking at the detail that was announced on Tuesday, and no decision's been made on legal action, but, you know, I have to really pick a net out.
Why have you taken no decision on legal action?
Because there's a massive... I mean, it's like the London A to Z telephone directory that was published on Tuesday. And it's absolutely right that we actually go through this, analyse it and really get to understand it. And so much is emerging as you get through the detail. There's so much, I'm tempted to say, bad news buried deep on Tuesday. Because, for example, one of the things we've actually found out is that what they call the cost-benefit ratio, the actual value for money of this thing, has dropped yet again. It's now down to, you know, what the government describes as a low value for money.
I reckon you are going to go to legal action, aren't you?
No, we're not. Not necessarily.
Oh, you're not?
Oh, no, hang on. No, we're not going to jump to legal action is the point I'm making. We're going to do this in a very considered way.
Okay.
Because as Annette was saying about the environmental impact, this is not going to take cars off the road. This is not going to substitute for air. And in fact, every landing slot at Heathrow that's freed up anyway is going to be substituted with a long-haul flight. BAA have said that. So it's going to have a very negative effect in terms of carbon. This is all spin.
OK, Martin Tett, thank you very much for joining us.
Thank you very much indeed.